Let's go, turn that shit up, man.
Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone after fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft. Then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jackle, Ivan, and Claudio. It's a Take Never Lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
Yo,
Hey.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Keepin' It Fantasy. Another Tuesday night, another opportunity to go ahead and give you guys some good football advice, some solid fantasy advice. As always, I'm joined by T-Ball extraordinaire, the commish, Chris Jackle. Chris, what's up, brother? How are you?
Ivan, how are we, man? The commish that makes me laugh. The T-ball extraordinaire. Hey, the shoe fits. I wear it, apparently. You know, man, how are you? Happy Tuesday. Week 16's here. Playoffs. You know, I'm hoping.
Playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Like Sandlin's saying here. Playoffs. You know, but hey, it's Tuesday night, 10 p.m., and Claudio is not here. So
Claudio is not here. Claudio should be enjoying himself. Well, I don't know how. He said it should be about 50 in Italy to where he's going, but I still hope he's enjoying himself. Claudio is in Italy, so he's out again. Bud. We miss him. Hope he's having a great time. Hope he gets back to us soon here. But yeah, man, it was another week down. It's getting to the nitty gritty. Playoffs are here. I'm excited about it. But before we get started, man, remember what to do. You guys know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe to The Tape Never Lies on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and also become a patron at www.thetapeneverlies.com. Honestly, you get the best football content, but Chicago Bears football content out there. You got, DDP's breakdowns, Kramer's QB school, X's with the O's. And of course, you have Cars Keys. Everybody loves Cars Keys. We all love cars. I'm sure Cars would be. Sure, Cars might drop in and say something in the chat. But yeah, do all that. It's a great investment. Only $7, but go ahead and do that. It should be done by every true Chicago Bears fan out there.
365, Ivan. It's all year round. You know, it's something that, unlike Claudio thinks that, week 18 comes and goes and everything's over. But no, the TTNL Network provides exclusive content to their patrons the entire year, let alone the pop-up shows that are for free, as well as keeping it 100 like you're talking about. And I hate to say it, but there's only, the sky's the limit right now. So, you should be getting on board now. We'll get on while the getting's good. And, because there's a good foundation being built here by this squad. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, but also a lot of talk by the boys. It's going to be a lot, great content. Join, see the link down below, and let's get going.
Yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, man.
Another week down, like we had mentioned before. Let's go jump right into studs and duds for the week. I'll go ahead and kick it off, bro. Nice and easy here. A guy that was a stud last week and has been consistently a stud for I think the last 4 weeks, I believe. Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence had 27 of 42, 64.3 completion percentage, 318 yards. Had 4 touchdowns on the day, had 1 pick, which was kind of the lone blemish for him. 3 rushing attempts for 21 yards, 27.8 points. as I'm looking at Fantasy Pros. But and this is a PPR. But yeah, it was an amazing. It's been an amazing couple weeks for Trevor Lawrence. He continues to shine. It looks like he's taking that next step.
Yeah.
They got him some weapons, like we had mentioned last week, and he just continues to shine out there.
And you're absolutely right. You know, we've definitely talked about him too over the last couple of weeks. Just a guy that you could look at starting clearly with confidence, because you're right. It seems to have made that step in terms of just a professional NFL quarterback. Him and Justin Fields are the cream of the crop out of those two, out of that quarterback class in that 2021 draft there. But yeah, man. And I'm going to just piggyback you, because a guy that I talked about last week is had a great game again this week. That was Zay Jones.
Yeah.
You know, he had 34.9 fantasy points, a career high for him. He had eight targets, 6 catches, 109 yards, but he had 3 tuds. And if you started him, good for you, because it was somebody that, you know, you were not sure about, because the targets were there, but not necessarily the statistics were backing it up over the last few weeks, most certainly. But he's definitely playing at a much higher level, 21 points, and in all PPR formats, 3 out of the last 4 leagues. So yeah, this past week was just kind of like a culmination of all the great things that have been going on in Jacksonville. And yeah, Zay Jones too. And I mean, Trevor Lawrence to Zay Jones has a nice ring to it down in, if you're down in Duval, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you know, I know Travis Etienne has had a up and down year, but you would imagine I would imagine them going and getting another running back this offseason to match up with Travis Etienne. And then as soon as that happens, I think if they develop a running game, I could see Trevor and this, passing game and the play action game really take another step. I'm going to go ahead and eat crow here, and I'm going to go ahead and mention Justin Fields as a stud for the week.
Okay.
I had him sitting. Like I said, that Eagles defense is legit. We saw him pressured a lot. He was sacked 6 times, but regardless of that, he was 14 of 21, very efficient, 66.7 completion percentage, had 152 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had 15 carries for 95 yards. One long, beautiful run that could have been like the run of the year if he hadn't stepped out. 23.6 points this past week. Justin Fields he just continues to amaze you. We talked about Trevor Lawrence just right now about how he got playmakers this past offseason, and he's taken another step. It's been a rocky, beginning, but I would probably say that's getting acclimated to Doug Peterson's, offense and what he wants to do and what he wants to run. But if the Chicago Bears this offseason can find a way to get a guy, and I'm not, maybe Chase Claypool is a huge help.
Wide receiver too.
Yes, I would want that. That would be the best case scenario. If you could find a guy, or if you could go ahead and draft a guy that could become that or something, I would love that. I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe via trade. I don't know how they're going to do it. We talked about Nuke Hopkins over in Arizona. We talked about how they might blow that thing up. But, whatever the Bears do, they need to find him a dude. And they need to find it quickly, because you see these guys taking another step in, once they get a guy, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. You had Tua and Tyreek Hill. You had, Diggs and Josh Allen. Find Justin a guy, and he's going to take another step, and he's going to continue to progress and be a, no doubt, number 1 fantasy type prospect come next year.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we've been pounding that drum all year, and it'll be fun to see what Poles and the boys do. It is exciting, whether it's free agency or via trade or draft. The options are limitless right now for this franchise with the money, the draft picks, and it seems to be the brain trust. So I'm extremely excited. And, Sandlin, speaking of making the playoffs in 4 leagues, I had probably the worst fantasy weekend. I made the playoffs in almost all of my leagues. I missed out on in 2 of them, and I fucking lost every single one of my matchups this past weekend. Dude. I literally went to bed Sunday night. I didn't really go to bed. I kind of just laid there and stared at the ceiling, just angry. Because I'm like, this motherfuckers. I was like, I couldn't even believe some of the shit that happened. Yeah. Like the Mac Hollins touchdown. The guy was clearly out of bounds, but he was fucking in bounds. And those 6 I lost by 3, but shit like that, man. It was just, but I digress.
I feel your pain. Look, I've 4 weeks in a row I've dropped, and I've been right there for 3 of the 4 weeks. I've been right there. The last week was really a bummer. This week that just passed, it was just like, oh my God, just somebody do something, and they didn't. So I feel your pain. I feel your pain on that. But yeah. Oh, are we bringing in a friend?
Apparently so.
Are we bringing in a friend?
Are we being hijacked?
We're going to bring in Mr. Keenan Allen wine mixer himself. Chris Sandlin joins the group. We're going to have to take this off, Chris.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
That up nicely.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
What's up, brother?
Man? I'm hijacking the show.
No,
I got the hookup.
Yeah. How you doing? We were just talking about our fantasy. Well, you were riding high right now because you rode Justin Fields to the playoffs.
Fields took you to
not in the TTNL league, but in 4 of my other leagues. I'm in a ton of leagues, but yes. So
okay, well, I mean, you know what? Talk about it. Like he's just been dynamic. After the first half of the season went away, he just started turning it up. So talk about it a little bit.
So, I'm in some dynasty leagues too, where I picked him and wasn't starting him at the beginning of the season, just holding on to him just to see. And when I did get him in a couple other leagues, it was halfway through the season. He was still on the waivers.
Yeah, people were dropping him after week 3.
Yeah, but once they finally unleashed his running to collect with the passing yards and started opening up the offense to him, even though he doesn't have anything for real weapons other than his running backs. His points, just his fantasy points just took off. I mean, you're counting on 8 to 10 rushing fantasy points plus any touchdowns and everything. So, I mean, he's like the Jalen Hurts, he's like, well, not so much Mahomes anymore. Mahomes doesn't run nearly as much anymore, but Josh Allen, just as far as what they can do, obviously he's not on the level as them two guys yet, but he also doesn't have the weapons that they have.
Very true.
So, but it's been great because I'm watching these games and they're competitive in all the games. I'm not planning on winning any of these games just because our defense is shot, our offense is injury, offensive line is terrible. But as long as Justin Fields is not getting himself killed and putting up points, it's keeping me alive in some of my fantasy leagues.
Well, let's stick with you. You got a stud other than Justin, you got a stud for the week?
For any particular position?
Let me ask you a question just on Justin Fields. Do you think, I'm just looking at the numbers, 15 carries last week. He had 6 against Green Bay. Obviously didn't play against the Jets, 4 against the Falcons, 18 against the Falcons, 13 against Detroit, 50. Do you see that sustainable for him next year? Do you think they're going to have that many design runs for him? Obviously some of those are scrambles that lead to attempts.
I mean,
what do you guys see for him in the future with respects to carries?
I'm hoping not to see that sustainable. I'm hoping that I'm hoping they do. He needs to run also.
Yes.
It needs to
be
part of his game. What do you think is
like a number that you'd be comfortable with?
It's just you need, and he's breaking off some of these really long ones in that touchdown, that 48-yard touchdown he almost had. Runs like that are great, but he also has a lot where he's running for his life. So hopefully if we can get the rest of the offense improved, whether it's the line, the receivers, everything, that his runs will be more productive per run.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Even though, he's very productive but a lot of that is because he'll break off one 60-yard run, and that just skews the numbers even more.
True. Yeah, no, it's just must-watch television too. And when you talk about the points, you just look at the numbers the offense has put up this year. It's just the polar opposite of what we're used to, and we're like, shit, we scored 21 points.
We were begging for 21 points last year.
We could just get over to, our defense could hold them, but now it's like, fuck, now we're trying to boat race teams, if our defense now can just do their thing, it'll be fun to see. But, as we turn it back to fantasy, I did interrupt you with the question. So you were going to give us one of your top performers for week 15.
Yeah, it could be any position, just random position.
Anybody that did well for you or that you were impressed with their performance.
So I run a guillotine league. I know I've talked to you about it before, Chris, and it's down to the final 4
That's awesome.
That the teams get locked in, and I'm in. And we've got a guy in our league that didn't have to spend much of his money, and like the last few weeks, he's gotten Josh Allen, Travis Kelce, just his team is stacked.
So when teams lose, their players
go
available.
back in, and then you use everybody starts out with like 1,000 fab, and then
it sounds like so much fun.
It is. It's amazing. It's 18 people to start, so everyone's team start out is just okay, but you know, I'll tell you who I rode all season long is Austin Eckler.
Yeah,
and about 5 weeks ago, I was able to pick up McCaffrey right after he got traded. So I've been riding them too because of the fact of how many PPR points they get using the passing game just as much. And they're, you know what I mean? It's just, I've been riding them too like crazy. And Justin Fields is my quarterback in that.
Beautiful.
So those three have been riding me.
3 right now going into week 16 too. You know, Fields is just the top 3 quarterback. I mean, that's
going against Buffalo. We've seen Buffalo's defense is good, but he can score fantasy points on them, and they're going to have to keep up with them anyway. So
Christian McCaffrey had 28 attempts, 108 yards, had a touchdown, had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 30 yards, 25.8 points, and Austin Eckler had kind of a down week. 12 carries, 58 yards, had a touchdown, 2 receptions for 12 yards, 15 points. But I mean, yes, those guys have been Austin Eckler's been consistent all year. Until the trade, I would say,
I think
McCaffrey's been up and down.
I think it helped him.
Oh, it did.
I know he's not being used quite as much, but he's getting way more production out of his use.
Yeah.
And I think that the less production is keeping him healthy because that's been one of his big things over the last couple of years. So, and now that Debo's out, they're not using Debo in the running game. So I think that also kind of helps him a little bit too.
Definitely.
I also have AJ Brown in that league. So he's had a few duds, but he's had a lot of blow up games. So he's been one of my big scorers there.
Okay. Yeah, I think Josh Allen was a guy. Just you brought up Buffalo. I mean, he had another. What do you have? Almost 36 fantasy points. It's the 8th time in his career that he's had at least 35 fantasy points. I read that I think Cam Newton and Russell Wilson had the same amount of 35 plus point games, and that's in their careers. What's it? I wrote down the number. Allen's done it in 75 games. Cam Newton's done it in 148, and Russell Wilson's done it in 170. I mean, dude, Josh Allen is just otherworldly, dude. He is unreal. He had another monster week I didn't start Tua that game because I thought it was going to snow. I turned the game on. I'm like, where's the fucking snow? And in the fourth quarter, I started Taylor Heineke instead of in the playoffs. Like my buddy's like, what are you doing? I'm like, Tua snow bad. It doesn't sound good, and that backfired. Obviously,
the one league I had to start Tua in, I was nervous about starting him.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I got like 21, 22 points out of him.
Yeah.
In that guillotine league, though, I have Justin Fields, Tua, and Geno Smith. So I was like trying to figure out which one to start because, going against the Eagles in the snow, Geno going against San Fran. So like he's the one like, nope. And then so Justin Fields, the other two had already played, and I'm just like, just score more than they did. That's all I need.
That's all I need out of you.
Another stud for the week, and honestly, we were talking about you and I, Chris, were talking about it last week about how he was being used, and he could be a huge upside for a team that's already got the number 1 seed in the. I believe that are they the number 1 seed or number 2 seed in the AFC? Vikings? No, the Kansas City Chiefs. Jarek McKinnon. Jarek McKinnon went off again.
He killed me this week.
He killed me too. 10 carries, 52 yards, had a touchdown run, 8 for 8 on receptions and targets, 70 yards and a touchdown, 34.2 points on the Fantasy Pros, but he was the number 1 overall back this past weekend. Jarek McKinnon had a great week, had 2 back-to-back great weeks, so he's going to be a stud for me.
Yeah, man.
And
he's pounding that drum too.
He's still available in 50% of the sleeper leagues,
which is just insane to think about because he's had back-to-back 30-point weeks, right? Mm-hmm. He's been part of a trio that's had almost 60 targets in the last 3 games. Him, Schuster, and Kelsey. Like the guy is just, and that's not to say Pacheco isn't performing because he's doing just as well. I mean, he didn't put up 30, but he's out-carried McKinnon in the same time span. So
he had
it's like
15 carries, 86 yards on the
I
ground.
think McKinnon had what did you say? 13 for him?
McKinnon had 10.
Excuse me. Okay,
10.
so Pacheco still getting the rock, but it's that passing game, that PPR format. He's a killer. And Claudio, I went against him at the beginning of the year, Ivan and Chris. I was like, I just don't buy it with McKinnon. I did not see it. I thought Pacheco was the guy when CEH was out, and I definitely I took that on the shins. But McKinnon has been he won a lot of people a lot of games this past weekend. That's a good call, man.
Chris,
He's got another good matchup next weekend.
Chris, you got another stud down there?
Let's see. You KJ Osborne, man.
Oh, so I was talking about Chris Samlin.
Oh, dude. Sorry, Sandman.
So are you wanting someone for people to look for to pick up? Are we doing that?
No,
We're doing
no,
that
we're doing
later.
studs,
we just kind of did a little recap in the
yeah,
beginning of who did well,
top
people
guys
that we
for
talked
this past
about,
weekend.
maybe that performed well the week before.
Trying to think. I'm on all my teams. I have way too many teams. Noah
Brown was a dude who surprised me.
I have CeeDee Lamb in that guillotine league, and every time Noah Brown caught a touchdown, it just kind of pissed me off. Yeah,
and then he screwed Dak owners over when he bobbled that ball right into the hands of the receiver or the defensive player for the Jags. That would have been a 50-yard. That would have been 5 points for Dak. It would have been went from a 20-point day to a 25-point day, depending on your scoring format. But
I'll tell you, it's nice seeing Keenan Allen coming back and getting his targets. He's getting a ton of targets.
I stashed him all year. Good call, Chris.
I did too. Yeah. See my team name.
Yeah. Keenan Allen one mixer.
After week 1, I lost Dak and Keenan Allen. I went 0-4 in that league. Yeah. And then I've won 9 of the last 10. And I had to win this last week against the guy that I was trying to pass. So it was me and him against each other. Whoever gets that 4th spot.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about the sleeper leagues at the end of the show, but just to piggyback that, Chris, I had to win and I needed help. I was the low man on points at that point. There was 3, 8, and 6 teams. I won, and the guy that had to lose he was winning at the time, but they was going against AJ Dillon, but he was down 17 points. Dillon ended up with like 21 before he got dinged, and he lost. So I didn't even have to worry about the tie because I just ended up getting in on record. So I ended up sneaking in the playoffs with a little help. I didn't want to root for the Packers or Dillon, so I didn't even watch the shit. I just was like, I'll see how it goes in the morning.
Yeah, Ron had mentioned Kirk Cousins basically in one half. He was 34, 54, 63% complete percentage, 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 34.4 fantasy points. So it's definitely a guy that was a stud this past weekend, Ron.
And that was my KJ Osborne pick. That's who I was going to say when you had mentioned Chris.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, he had almost 32 points, 31.7 points, 10 catches, 157 yards, and a TD. He had 16 targets. I mean, that's just fucking insane. He played 50. He ran 52 routes out of 70 snaps. Like, this guy was out there. They're trying to get him the ball. Obviously, he was just shaking and moving in the second half for the Vikings. And I mean, I feel bad for Jeff Saturday because he just he showed why coaching experience is important to be an NFL head coach. And I don't think it was good for players that wanted to be head coaches. I think Saturday experience is kind of shed a little light on why you may need to do some other things before you become a head coach.
So, Ivan, you were talking about Trevor Lawrence and Evan Ingram. Yeah. Good God.
Yeah.
That guy did
it again.
Yeah. Again, 11 catches for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just nuts. Yeah. I have none of him anywhere.
Me neither.
Because I'm scared to death to play him, even though my tight end, I hate the tight end position. Because I don't have Kelsey at all, and it's just a nightmare.
Was that last week?
Everybody's been in that situation this year. If you don't have one of those top, if you don't have Kelsey, basically, I mean, Kittle's done a little.
Oh, that was week 14, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was last week. But no,
what did he do last week?
He had 162 yards last week. He had like 30-some points. But this week he was still top 10 tight end for this week. Eight catches, 10 on 10 targets, 62 yards. But he had 14 fantasy points. So he was still a top 10 tight end for this week. So,
He's going into week 16, another tight end. He's TE9, Darren Waller, just a little, he's TE7 if anyone was able to grab him or,
it was nice.
him.
It was nice seeing Kittle get his game.
Yeah.
He got me a win in one of my games.
Nice. Yeah, Kittle was,
Yeah.
And that might continue with Debo being out. So I was really shocked that Ayuk had a stinker.
I think everybody did.
I mean, I'm glad I don't have him at all, but I was going against him in a couple, and I'm like, oh, here we go. But it didn't happen.
I'm gonna go before we get into duds. I'm gonna go just name off two other studs at running back. David Montgomery had a good week. 24 fantasy points, 12 carries, 53 yards, had a touchdown, 3 receptions off 3 targets, 38 yards, and a touchdown as well. And also Latavius Murray for Denver had 24 carries, 130 yards, had 1 touchdown, had 1 target for 12 yards, 21.2 points. He was a top 10 running back for the week. So let's get into some duds. I'm going to go ahead and just run off a couple guys.
Yeah, name a couple dudes, and then I got a couple, and Chris, you got a couple, or a guy that didn't perform for you this week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a guy, and honestly, like I said, if I'm going to eat crow with Justin Fields, I'm going to go ahead and beat my chest with this one. Pat Freiermuth had 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 on the week, and if you sat him, you're welcome. But if not, it was a rough one for you. So Pat Freiermuth is a dud for me. No targets on anything. He had nothing.
Who was your other guy?
My other dud?
Yeah, you said you had 2.
No.
Oh, you only had the one?
No, well, right now I only had the one.
Oh, all right. Chris, who do you got? Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what his stats were, but Chris Moore for Houston, who I thought, was going to have another game with Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks out, and he did nothing. Not nothing, but didn't do much. I'm trying to remember what he even had, what his numbers were.
I'm trying to find him.
I don't have him. I was looking at running backs. But yeah, he's top of my list on stinkers.
Yeah, because everyone tried to pick him up too. Because going into everyone was trying to figure out what was going on with the wideout.
4 catches on 9 targets, 42 yards. Had no
9 targets,
touchdowns. No touchdowns. 8.2 fantasy points.
I mean, like I said, and I had him I am in a couple leagues that are standard.
Oh,
that I still play in from 2004,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he was one in one of them, and I did end up losing in that league.
Gotcha.
So.
Devontae Adams is a stinker for me, 6.8.
Oh, yeah.
He hurt me heavy. I have a lot of shares in him, both dynasty, just as well as just redraft leagues. Not what I was expecting going into that game. He even had a couple parlays with his his name in them, and they just did not come to fruition. So yeah, he was a big dud for me. I think he had 4 catches on 28 yards. Not what you expect out of the wide receiver 1 in that offense. So. I mean, Patriots, Bill Belichick, they're going to, find a way, and clearly they did here. Granted, Jacoby Myers decided to throw the ball to Chandler Jones, just say, here, bud, and, hand the win off over to the Raiders. But
I still can't believe that was the worst fucking play I've ever seen in my life. That's the dumbest football play. You could no knowledge of the situation, what's going on. What in the hell was he thinking? First of all, Ramondre Smith, what were you thinking? You already were in field goal range. And then on top of that, whoever number 16 was, what the hell were you thinking? It was Jacoby Myers. All around. Just all around piss poor football.
He faced the music after he did stand up in front of the media and talk. I mean, but living in New England and living with Patriots, Patriots fans all around, they don't know what to fucking do with themselves right now. It is crazy because that's like old Detroit Lions shit. You know what I'm saying? That is wild that you haven't seen that out here, and people don't know what to do. Kids are like, what kind of football is this? I don't know. It's like, oh my God, there's no parade. So yeah. But no, that was probably one of my good friends, diehard Patriots fan. He just said that was arguably the dumbest ending to anything I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't believe I just witnessed that.
I agree.
Yeah. And then he drank a fucking bit of scotch and probably passed out.
Went to bed. Oh man,
Yelled at
yeah,
his
that was
dog, I don't know.
terrible. But let's keep going with the duds. Christian Watson, 4-6, 46 yards, no touchdowns,
Can't run
8.6
routes.
points. Struggling running the routes. I mean, he's getting a lot more targets, but it wasn't a good week for him this past week. Although the Packers did get the win, those bastards. But yeah, Christian Watson a dud for the week.
Mr. Sandman.
Well, I mean, Diggs didn't do much. He had, 5
Mm-hmm.
catches for 60 yards, but even worse than that was Chris Olave, 3 catches for 53 yards. And I had both of them on the same team, along with Zonovan Knight, who is another one, but his is more injury-based, but still 2.3 points on the league I have him in. So
Speaking of injury, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you can't not say him for being a dud first freaking series.
For the season.
Just that was bad for me in a run. I definitely had a couple shares of him. And,
me too.
That one hurt, but I did start him in the TTNL league and I still snuck by with a win somehow. So, and by the way, Claudio we should have set his lineup for him because he left a injured player, Damian Pierce, in the starting lineup. And I forgot he was out of the country. So when Logan was talking shit about him on the app there, I was like, "Oh, Claudio, what are you doing?"
Damn.
Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah, but nonetheless, you guys
please
got any more duds?
Please tell me that didn't give someone a win.
No, it didn't. He got crushed.
He
lost 60 points.
Okay, because that drives me. And obviously that was an accident.
Yeah.
But when people just stop at the end of the season,
we had a couple.
They
won't be in the league next year.
Crazy.
They won't be in the league next year.
Yeah, definitely have a couple.
I'm in a couple leagues where we're looking at that right now too.
Yeah.
Another dud, kind of a big dud. Justin Herbert, 28 of 42, 313 yards, but he threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, only had 10.7 points this past week. So he is a big dud for me on the quarterback side.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm sure there's a long list.
I mean, I'm going to just, based on situation, DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, just duds, I mean, just based on what they're working with. Plus they're a dumpster fire. And we've, Ivan, you and I especially have been talking a lot about how shitty it is in Arizona and, what they may end up having to do over there. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, it sounds like their general manager was the one that was groping people and not the other guy. I don't know. There's all sorts of like that mistaken identity thing that guy's claiming. It's pretty fucking nuts if you read about it. But yeah, those two guys were duds. If anyone started Hopkins or Marquise Brown, I don't think you probably did. Maybe Hopkins because you're desperate, But yeah, those are a couple of duds for me.
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one that I had in multiple leagues was Donta Foreman.
Yeah,
he had 10 attempts for 9 yards.
That hurt,
and that's it.
Yeah.
And I didn't start him in all the leagues I had him in just because I don't know. He's been kind of up and down, but even DJ Chark. I have a few shares of him, and he had 1 catch for 18 yards. I mean, I know he's not an absolute stud, but he's been kind of consistent lately with getting his targets and some catches. Yeah. And this last week was just awful.
Yeah, you're thinking that Detroit offense too, right? Like he would just continue that, and it didn't come to fruition. We talked about.
But I mean, also he's going against the Jets, so they've got one of the best defensive back in the league.
Yeah. Good for Zach Wilson kind of stepping in and doing his thing. We shit on him and we clown him, but it was nice to see him actually show some backbone and stand up and do a couple things out there on the football field to rally his boys. That was kind of nice to see for the Jets.
Yeah, I need him. I need him because of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah,
need him.
Yeah.
Well, since being exposed, he's taken a step up. You know what I mean? Since being called out and sat on the bench. I mean, not dressing.
Could have galvanized him and his teammates too. That could have been a pretty important thing. Yeah,
definitely. And he stood up. He stood up in front of everybody and owned it. So yeah, it's been a good.
And he's starting Thursday too because they said Mike White's not ready.
Right.
And if he plays well, I think he's just going to play the rest of the year. Yeah,
they should. They should.
Well, let's move on. You want to go to injuries or the waiver wire, Chris?
We could start with injuries, and do you want to talk about it? Jalen Hurts. We don't know what's happening there. Yeah,
let's go into injuries. Go ahead, start it out with Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts with the shoulder. You don't know what's happening. They're talking about. Before we came on, I was reading he may play. There's a chance he could be available against the Cowboys. But the last I read is Mr. Minshew is the guy you're going to want to try to pick up in that offense. So right now, Jalen Hurts was probably one of the bigger injuries in Week 15, which was surprising because you didn't really hear about it until after the fact. But there's a couple other injuries that we can get to. But were there any ones in specific that you wanted to talk about?
Staying with Hurts real quick.
Yeah.
He did say that he could throw. He did say that he gave a head nod to the question. So he acknowledged that he could throw, in a way. So I would imagine if Thursday comes around and he's still hurting, then yeah, I think it's going to be Gardner Minshew. Another guy, Lamar Jackson. The Ravens are struggling. They really are. That was he had a PCL, I think.
Yes.
He had a PCL injury. I don't know what's going to happen. They said Tuesday this afternoon they were going to mention something. I did not see the update, so I don't know what's going on with Lamar. But if Lamar continues to be down, it looks like it's going to be a rough go for the Ravens to at least make the playoffs. You got the Bengals playing a lot better. It's going to be hard for them to come out and try to run that offense without their their number one guy. So.
Yeah, we talked about Jonathan Taylor out for the year. Obviously, we talked about that before we went into it. A.J. Dillon with a concussion. I know today Rodgers was talking about it on McAfee saying he hasn't been cleared yet. So I don't know.
No, he has been cleared.
He has?
Yes, I got a notification for it. I'm looking right now.
Oh, nice.
6 hours ago, he cleared.
Oh, perfect.
He cleared today. Yes.
Okay, nice.
So they're saying that's a good sign that it was just 1 day later. So he could be available this weekend.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, so a couple running backs that kind of got nicked up, but obviously Taylor's out, and it sounds like, as you're saying, we're looking to see A.J. Dillon back. I saw Khalil Herbert's coming back from IR. Not that I think he's going to have much fantasy relevance, but yeah. Who else you guys got for injuries?
Well, for me, it's going to be Tyler Lockett. He broken bone in his index finger.
Right?
Yeah, index finger. So they said he's probably going to be out this weekend, but he'll probably return to close out the season. They're in a battle too. The Seahawks are right in it, the wild card hunt. So losing a guy like that, a playmaker, is going to be huge for them.
I know they said the surgery went perfectly, so they're hoping that he can get back sooner than later.
Caden Debo is still kind of on schedule as far as we know. He's still
round
MCL.
1?
Yeah, they said round 1. Probably going to end up being out the rest of the year, but will be available for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, do you think OBJ really signs with the Cowboys after Jones came out and said
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to. Like, you're going to have to get some type of. You're going to have to get your beak wet in the regular season, and I don't think. I think OBJ just kind of wants to. Yeah. He just kind of wants to show up. That first week of the playoffs and go out there and play. And it's like, we got to see you at least get on the football field. I know he's an amazing talent, but you haven't played football all year. Like, you haven't been on the field all year. Can he turn it on like that? I don't know. I mean, like I said, I know he's got talent, but damn, you got to get some experience on the field at least.
Yeah, who knows? Still OBJ, just drama.
Treylon Burks looks like he's coming back this week. Cleared concussion protocol. I saw that after Green Bay releases Sammy Watkins, Baltimore picked him up.
Yeah, but Duvernay got hurt his foot in practice today, and now he's on the IR out for the year, needs surgery or whatever.
Ben Skoranic's out for the season.
Yep.
Yeah, they got Dallas Goedert coming back against the Cowboys, so that's going to be huge. For if it's Gardner Minshew or Jalen Hurts, depending on, but that's going to be good news for them.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton, hamstring issue.
That guy's been one of my Achilles heel in a lot of my leagues all year.
Yes.
Russell Wilson.
Fucker. We dodged a major bullet here in Chicago.
Yeah, definitely did. Mecole Hardman had an abdomen issue. Looks like he's going to be good to go on Christmas Eve. But that might be something, if you're streaming him, that might be something to look out for.
Okay.
And then like you mentioned before, Dameon Pierce on IR. Jeff Wilson did he go to IR?
No, I think he might be back this week.
Yeah. Okay. So Jeff Wilson, I know last week they said that it was like the best case scenario for him. So I would expect them to try to give him a go this week, like you had mentioned, Chris. So
yeah, they said he was close to playing week 15. Yeah. So he should be back this week, they're thinking.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move forward. Do you want to go waiver wire?
Yeah.
All right. You started off, Chris. Let's go with the waiver wire. Who you got to pick up this week?
Which Chris?
Oh, Jackle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know.
So last names.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. I talked about it earlier. I'm gonna say, if Hurts is out, you may want to scoop up just in case, or if you have Hurts, grab, Mr. Minshew. He's really not rostered at all. He had a couple of starts in 2021. I think he's a guy in that offense that he's a plug and play, not a Jalen Hurts style. But I think if you are stuck and you need to grab a guy, you could go out and pick up, Mr. Minshew, Gardner Minshew, fucking Uncle Rico. He's a good safety valve for you if you were panicking when you're seeing the Hurts news. And at last minute, they're going to sit him. You may want to be able to just pick him up and just, kind of give yourself a little peace of mind going into your playoff matchup. If that's what you have in front of you.
All right. So those of you that may have lost Jonathan Taylor again for the season, they got two backs, but Zach Moss out-snapped Deion Jackson 53-25. And Moss is available basically like 4%. He's only rostered in 4% on Sleeper, Yahoo, and 0.8% on ESPN.
Yeah.
So
he had 24 carries, 84 yards, and a target last week, taken over after Taylor got hurt.
Man. I mean, they're not a great running team, but if you need a back, he's gonna be the workhorse back. It's looking like.
Yeah. And in Deion Jackson, just to your point, he had he had 13 carries for 55 yards. He had that one catch and the one touchdown.
Yeah.
But he did have the fumble, So I think to that, I see, like you said, I think Zach Moss is probably the RB1 there with Deion getting, smaller dose of the carries.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're in desperate need, Deion, you could use like in a flex.
Yeah.
He is rostered in more leagues though, obviously, because he was used earlier.
About 22%. Yep.
Yep.
Who you got, Ivan?
I got Jawan Johnson from the Saints. Yeah. He got hurt in week 12 against San Francisco, was out week 13 against Tampa Bay. Then they had the bye week right after that. So real quiet for the past 3 weeks prior to this week. But he blew up this past week, had 20-some points, 4 catches for 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. And this isn't like an anomaly for him. He's been pretty consistent. Prior to that injury, he averaged for the 3 weeks prior to that, it was 10. He averaged 10 points, had a touchdown in each of those games. And then he had another 15-point game in week 7 with 2 touchdowns. So he's actually been, like I said, prior to that injury, he was very consistent. They were going to him, being targeted a lot. So I would say Jawan Johnson right now in the Fantasy Pros League, I think they have him available, or he's only rostered, in 18.3% of the league. So he's available. He's a guy that's getting targets. He's a guy that can obviously find the end zone. So I would say Jawan Johnson for me.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, I mean, think about this. Jawan Johnson has scored 7 touchdowns in the last 7 games.
Yeah, 4 out of the last 5 too.
Yeah, you just don't get that. I mean, I know that it's not consistent and he's not getting a ton of yards and consistently, but if you need somebody, he could really come through for you.
Yeah. He's double-digit fantasy points in his last 4 games, I think, too. So it's like the guy is just, he's one of your top tight ends going into with a position that has been so much in flux, and you can't really, if you don't have one of the top 1 or 2, you're trying to. He's a guy. Yeah,
or if you have Mark Andrews and it's just not panning out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got?
We'll go with
back to you.
Jackle.
So I brought him up earlier. You got me with the Mr. Johnson one because I really, really like him. But you brought up where'd he go? Is KJ Osborne, man. The guy is not rostered anywhere. And I can't find his numbers, but he is a dude that is rostered in 8% pretty much. we talked about his week last week. The Vikings are they're ultimately could be playing for a 1 seed, and he is a guy that 16 targets last week. Not saying he's going to do that again, but you can see somebody that is 13 targets in the last, basically looking at 13 targets in the last 4 weeks, kind of something along that line. Like he's been consistently seeing the ball. It's not putting up huge numbers, but this past week it all kind of came to fruition. I think he's a guy with the probability of maybe like a flex spot, but rostered in 8%. He's probably not going to cost you, too much money of your fab at this point because there was such an anomaly. People look at it like, oh, he's not going to do it again. I think he's a guy that you could probably grab and start in like a flex spot. I don't think you could look to have him in like your wide receiver 1 or 2, but he's somebody that I think you could help going into, week 16 against the Giants.
All right, yeah. I like Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders. I almost said football team, but they should have stood as a football team.
We
but anyway,
like that. We've talked about that.
We have talked about that. But he has a touchdown in each of his past 2 games, targeted about 15 times in those 2 games. He had 11 points against the Giants before the bye, and then this past week he had about 16 points? Where was that? Jahan, where are you? 20 points, 20.5 points in PPR leagues, 16 in standard. So he had 4 catches, 105 yards, and the touchdown this past week. So I would go with Jahan Dotson. He's available he's rostered in only 21.7% of the leagues according to Fantasy Pro. So
all right. I'm going to go with the guy that's going to be replacing Tyler Lockett,
you bastard,
Seattle offense, Marquise Goodwin.
Good call.
Rostered in 4%. Last week it wasn't a great, he had 5 targets, 2 catches for 10 yards. The week before that, he had 5 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. But all those targets that Lockett gets, which is about 8.5 targets the last 4 games, they got to go somewhere. Obviously Metcalf's probably going to get a couple of those, but Marquise Goodwin, he's my top look at for the wide receivers this week.
Yeah. He's had 5 games with 5 targets, and he scored 20 PPR points and added in 2 of those games. So he's definitely that's a good call, man. He was somebody that I was just going to mention. So yeah, I definitely like that, man. Marquise Goodwin, that's a good pick. Yeah. So. Shit, you got me again, Sam, man.
I have a long list because you guys have named everyone on my list so far. So I'm glad I made a long list.
So Chuba Hubbard, we talked about Mr. Foreman. He's a guy that is rostered. He's a little more, under 50%, but it seems to be the tide has kind of shifted to in his favor. It was got to Foreman in weeks like 12, 13, 14, and then week 15. Even week 14, Hubbard had a day, but Foreman still had put up numbers. And then this past week, Hubbard seemed to, kind of take the load and do more with his opportunities. He is he's got a matchup against Detroit where, no running back has scored more than 10 PPR points against them in the past 8 games. So it makes you a little nervous with Foreman. But I think with Hubbard, I think you just have a better opportunity to get more points in terms of just receptions. I know I just basically said they haven't given up 10 fantasy points in a PPR format in the last 8 games. But out of the 2 running backs there, I think Hubbard has a better opportunity. It's just, and if he is there, I think he's a guy you should try to grab. 50% of the leagues, it's up in the air. Take a look to see if he's there. But I think you're going to see Hubbard just get more of the lion's share of the opportunity, with the Panthers in that matchup against Detroit.
All right. I'm going to go with a guy. I actually mentioned him last week, so I'm going to double up on him. Isaiah Hodgins again from the New York Giants. Past 2 weeks prior to this week, he had 15 points in each of those weeks. 4 for 4 on his receptions and targets this week. Only 37 yards, but it was a down week for the Giants. It was a down week for Daniel Jones. I still think he can be a factor. Like I said, put him on the bench, or if you were desperate, go ahead and start him. I think he could go ahead and have a bounce back week. I'm looking, for the Giants to actually really try to make a push because they're in the thick of things too. He's being targeted a lot. Like these past 3 weeks, 12, 14, he has 18 targets or 16 targets. 16 targets in the past 3 weeks. I had mentioned before the past 2 weeks, prior to this one, he had 15 points, had a touchdown in each of those games. So I'm going to stick with him. I think that there's a connection growing between him and Daniel Jones. Salmon?
All right. See if I pronounce this right. But if you are looking for some tight end help, a guy that's come on in the last 3 weeks is Chigozie Okonkwo in Tennessee. His last 3 weeks, he's getting you at least 10 fantasy points in a PPR, and that's not counting his touchdown 2 weeks ago. So without the touchdown, he's still getting around 10 fantasy points. They don't have anybody to. I know they don't throw a lot, but they just don't have anybody to throw to. Treylon Burks coming back, that could hurt or help, because this guy is such an athlete, and he's just one of the best pass catchers I've seen in a long time. And I've had him in a few leagues, but he's still available in quite a few leagues. Yeah. I'm not sure what his percentage is, but yes, that guy.
Chig.
Yeah, it was an adventure of trying to pronounce his name last week.
Last week I gave it a shot. I butchered it, so you did much better than I did, Chris. So well done, man.
Definitely. He is the past 2 weeks, I think let me switch this up. Past 3 weeks, he's 10 points, 18 points, and 10 points for Chig. So yeah. Chris not Sandler, Jackle. You got
a little bit of a sleeper, like kind of if you're in a super flex 2 quarterback type of league with a real good matchup. Davis Mills of the Texans going against Tennessee. Tennessee is number 3 in giving up the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They just gave up 22 points against, obviously the Chiefs. Granted, that is Patrick Mahomes, but I'm just trying to say that if you're desperate and you need somebody, he's rostered in under 10%. He's somebody that has an opportunity to put up some points if you're still trying to figure your situation out because you had Kyler or you were dealing with the Jimmy Garoppolo injury, you didn't get Brock Purdy or whatever. So Davis Mills is a sleeper, kind of a back end starter, obviously, but it's more of like a super flex or 2 quarterback league recommendation.
Cool. Let's move on. I think we're good with the waiver wire for this week. Let's go ahead and get into our starts and sits for the week. I was thinking more or less like anybody against the Texans, but I'm going to go ahead and go on the opposite of that. I actually think that you should start Devontae Smith. I think he's earned that in the past few weeks, regardless of who's at quarterback. To be honest with you, I think would he have like 120, 130 yards against us this past weekend? Where's his numbers? Let me find it real quick. Smith. Yeah, he had 100 and something yards this past week. I know he was like top. Oh, there we go.
I've been trying to trade for him in one of my dynasty leagues.
Yeah, 5 of 8, 126 yards. Had 17.6 points this past weekend. I think that he's gonna, if they go ahead and they double AJ Brown, I mean, this guy's speed like this. Look at his past 3 weeks: 21 points against the Titans, 17 points against the Giants. And then again, 17 points against our Chicago Bears. Had 2 touchdowns against had a touchdown in each game against the Titans and the Giants. No touchdowns against the Bears, but like I said, 126 yards, 17 points. I think the guy's going to continue to trend upwards and just continue to help out that team in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Salmon?
I think. I'm trying to think. I'm going running through my head of players that I have. Garrett Wilson. I think I have him in a couple leagues, and he's one of the guys that has really gotten better with Mike White being in, but he didn't really have that rapport with Zach Wilson before. But I think this past week, Wilson, like you said, stepped up, started getting his guys more involved. So, even Elijah Moore, we got Elijah Moore kind of coming back into the fold, but I think Garrett Wilson
on the waiver wire too.
Yeah. I think Garrett Wilson's still one of those top rookie wide receivers that's contributing right away and every week. He's the best receiver on that team. And as long as Zach Wilson, is still, they're going to have to keep up, with anybody they're playing. And I just think that Garrett Wilson's one of my guys.
Yeah.
Jackle?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think Wilson and him could put up a little number this week. So, that'll be exciting to see.
Wilson and Wilson.
Yeah. The Wilson squared combo. Speaking of squared combos, I'm going to say you could start both running backs for the Chiefs against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are just fucking, they're a sieve when it comes to the running game. They've given up, what is it? In the last 4 weeks, they've given up an average of just under 37 points to the running backs. And last week we talked about how well the KC running backs have done. This is just a really favorable matchup. I still can't believe that that McKinnon is doing what he's doing. But with that said, I just Pacheco McKinnon combination must start for me. Great matchup. Hopefully get you some points and get you to the big dance and maybe win a little bit of, bread.
Hopefully. That'd be nice. I'm going to go with a guy that hasn't had that great of a year and is just coming off of IR. Had a nice week last week. That's Darren Waller against the Pittsburgh Steelers on our Saturday Night Football, we'll call it, because every game's on Saturday except for 3. So Saturday Night Football, Raiders, Steelers. I'm going to go with Darren Waller. Had 13 points, I think, this past week. He had, like I said, rough go for him for the year, but I think in this game he's going to get targeted a lot more. Maybe something happened. Maybe he just needed to be healthy and, starting to turn it on at the back end of the season, even though I don't think the Raiders are going to do jack shit in the rest of the games, but yeah, we'll see. I think he's going to put up some numbers against the Steelers. Sandlin?
Guy we did talk about coming off possible concussion, but as long as he's cleared and good to go, if you need a flex spot and you have AJ Dillon and you're trying to think if I play him or not, that both running backs have been killing it. They're going against Miami, that's ranked 22nd against the run. And, Dillon's scoring over 17 fantasy points the last 3 weeks. So he's a guy. I've got him and Aaron Jones in a league together. This could be the first time I'm playing both of them in the same week.
Okay.
Jackal.
Gabe Davis against our beloved Chicago Bears. I think he's a guy who is not, if you've had him, you've probably not started him since probably, I don't know, week fucking 6. I mean, he hasn't had double-digit fantasy points since week 11, and he's only done that twice since week 7. He's averaged about 5.8 targets, but he's coming against the Bears, who's given up just about 39 fantasy points to opposing receivers over the last 4 weeks. I think it's an opportunity for Gabe Davis to get off the schneid and, maybe get you some fantasy points. So Gabe Davis against the Bears, I think could be a start for people this week.
Yeah, I think the Bears are in danger of giving up 200-yard receivers in back-to-back weeks with the Buffalo coming in. I agree with that. A guy, kind of a surprise taking a long shot on him, but just because I don't like how the Rams are able to stop the run. You saw AJ Dillon kind of run all over him. Aaron Jones kind of ran all over him this past week. I'm going to go with Latavius Murray. Had 100 and something. I believe he had 100 and something yards this past week. Let me go ahead and make sure about that. But had a decent week this past week.
Did.
But I think he's a guy. Yeah, he was number 10, 130 yards. Had a touchdown. I think he could have a solid game against the Rams. The Rams are not a good team. These aren't the Super Bowl Rams. It's a different story with that defense. So I think Latavius Murray might have a solid week, especially if Russell Wilson isn't going to play. I think they're going to lean heavy on that defense and that running game for the Broncos. So, Sandlin?
Gonna go with anybody on Buffalo except Knox. And Knox has actually been coming along, but the Bears are pretty stingy to tight ends. So I don't really have anyone right at the moment.
Start Jawan Johnson.
Jarek McKinnon, if you got him.
Yeah, start both of them. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I know we already said.
Jawan Johnson.
Yeah, definitely.
Him. That's your boy. You talked about him earlier. I think he's got a matchup-proof situation. So, yeah, start him.
I'm going to take another long shot. I'm going to go with, Jameson Williams. I almost said Jamal Williams. Jameson Williams
him too.
Against the Panthers. I think he's going to have a day this week. I know he had, he had one touchdown, a couple targets. But I feel like they're going to, at this last couple games of the season, they're going to start to let him go a little bit more. I think this is the game where he has multiple targets, multiple catches, and at least a touchdown against the Panthers. So I'm going to go with Jameson Williams to round it out. And then let's go ahead and go to sits.
Couple of sits?
Yeah, a couple of sits.
We could wrap up?
Yeah, we could wrap up with I'm going to go – I won't go. I'm gonna defer to Chris Sandlin.
Yeah, man.
And then I'll
our
come
guests
back.
Go first.
Of course.
You were hoping someone else was gonna go.
Yeah,
first?
go ahead and go.
I got one for you. I got one for you.
I'm trying to get some people that we haven't talked about.
Brandon Ayuk against the Washington Commanders. I think last two games he has had just 7 targets with 4 receptions. 76 receiving yards. He has a touchdown, but without that touchdown, it would have put him at 3 straight performances of under 10 fantasy points. In his last 4 games, Washington has allowed an average of 20 fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And in that span, they've only given up 1 receiver to have scored 20 fantasy points total. So I think it's an opportunity for you to sit Mr. Ayuk going against the Commanders.
All right, I'm going to go with Geno Smith. I think he's going to struggle against the Chiefs. Like I said, I know they got DK Metcalf still, and I know we were talking about Goodwin, but it just, to me, I think the Chiefs are gearing up for the playoffs. I think that defense is going to step up for him, and I think he's going to struggle in Arrowhead with the crowd noise, with it being loud, with it being intense. They need to win. The Seahawks need to win badly, and I just for some reason I just feel like he's not going to meet the mark when it comes to it this weekend. So I'll say Geno Smith would be a sit for me.
Okay.
Back to me, huh?
Sandman.
So I honestly do think I'm gonna sit Dawson Knox this week, to be honest with you. And Chicago's third against tight ends. They've got a plethora of weapons to use, and he hasn't really done a lot prior to the last couple weeks. Last year had a big, nice stretch. This year, they just haven't gotten him as involved except for the last couple weeks. So I've got a few different, I actually have more choices in the league I have him in that I can play, whether it be the 0.0 Freiermuth or the 3.5 point Mark Andrews. He is actually one I'm probably going to sit, Mark Andrews. I have him in guillotine. And I'm going to start, I think this is going to be the first time I'm going to start Gerald Everett over him. Yeah. Because he's consistently getting like 7 to 10 points.
Yep.
And I'm barely getting 7 points out of Mark Andrews every week.
Yeah.
And honestly, if Lamar Jackson is back, I don't even think it's going to matter because they weren't used. He had 2 good weeks. 3
Makes
good
no
weeks,
sense,
maybe.
though. I don't get it.
It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest anomalies of this year for fantasy is how does he fall off regardless, how does he not get the ball in his hands on that team with the receivers they have? I don't know. Speaking of receivers and speaking of shit that doesn't make sense, the Deshaun Watson situation with what's happening to the offense, with the weapons there. And I would sit Amari Cooper. He's had 28 targets in the last 3 weeks for 10 catches and 140 yards. I mean, that is just putrid. you know, and it's karma at its finest for that fucking franchise. You know, I don't even know if they've even won, but you know, they're going against the Saints, and they're tough against receivers. You know, they've given up just over 21 fantasy points to the entire receiving corps per game. You know, I think I said in the last 4 weeks. So it's a tough matchup in general, but the Browns and their star, it's just, you know, it's he has not done what they thought, you know, like Amari Cooper was going to do with Deshaun Watson, and neither has Nick Chubb, you know, and Kareem Hunt just wants to get the fuck out of there. So yeah, I think sit Amari Cooper going against the Saints this week.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the guy that we were kind of praising this a little while ago, Zay Jones. I wouldn't start him this week against the Jets. I like that Jets secondary. I think it's going to be tough. I don't know if did somebody say Zay Jones already?
Mm-mm.
Okay, yeah. So
we talked
Zay
about
Jones,
being a stud last week. But.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So Zay Jones, I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say that he's going to have a come to earth type of game against the Jets. The Jets are playing for something as well as the Jaguars. I don't know who's going to start at quarterback for the Jets, but I think that defense is going to be there for sure, showing up. So I think it's going to be a struggle for the Jaguars offense. We got anybody else, guys? Or do we want to move forward?
I would sit Jonathan Taylor. No. Actually, piggybacking off of Amari Cooper, Njoku.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's New Orleans is second in the league against tight ends, you know, right ahead of Chicago, and with everything going on there, I mean, can you really trust him? I mean, I guess if you have no other option, he's better than probably anyone on the waiver wire, except for Chig maybe, but he might be one if you have the option. Not trust him this week. You know, you're in playoffs. If you're playing this week, you're in the playoffs. So you can't afford to miss.
No doubt.
You're not lying, Mr. Sandman. You are not lying. So what do you want to do? Answer these last couple of questions and bust out of here?
Yeah, let's answer the questions. Then we got to get to the league and
we get to briefly talk about that. Yep.
So we'll go and answer some questions. Well, Caden, how do you guys feel about Zay Jones? Well, Caden, we liked him this week. I don't particularly like him starting, but we liked his performances the past few weeks. He's been kicking ass. So yeah, there you go. And then we got questions from Bob. I always love questions from Bob. Okay, man, big playoff question, half-point PPR, pick 2, Higgins, Keenan Allen, Christian Watson, or Chris Godwin. We'll start with
Allen.
Yeah,
Allen all day.
I'm going with
the first two.
I like Allen and Godwin. I think Brady uses Godwin a ton. I mean, he's his go-to guy. Mike Evans hasn't really done much at all this year. Russell Gage is kind of getting into the mix. He's one of the guys I'd be targeting on waivers that I didn't get to, but I'd go Godwin and Allen.
I'm going to go Higgins and Allen. I like Higgins this week going against the Patriots. I think the Bengals are like really starting to catch their stride here at the back end of the season. I think he's going to have a big week. So is Keenan Allen. So
that's pretty good drafting though, because if you have all those teams, I mean, Godwin is wide receiver 13, Allen's wide receiver 14 this week, T. Higgins is wide receiver 15, and Watson's wide receiver 17. So that's a pretty solid wide receiving core. So kudos to you, Bob.
You probably aren't going to go wrong with whichever team you pick.
Exactly. I would cross Watson problem off the list, but then again, he may have a bounce back. They're playing for their lives, you know. But
well, if he had run the right route,
yep.
And the one where he yelled at him in the middle of the field, are you going to go all the way to the other side?
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. But yeah.
Sticking with the Green Bay question, thinking of his value in a keeper league, will Aaron Rodgers return to Green Bay next year? What do you guys think?
Well, what's your other option? I mean, if it's Watson or who? I mean, I like Watson's value going into next year. And what pick are you going to surrender? I mean, there's a little bit more that may come into that. But, and you have Jefferson and fucking Lockett. I mean, do you have any running backs, Bob?
No.
Or is this like a 16 league? Like, what are we doing here?
Bob doesn't believe in running backs.
I mean, what are we looking at for the keeper? Do you keep one? Do you keep two? Are they automatically your first round pick?
20th pick, you said.
20th pick. What about the other two?
Dalvin Cook is. Oh, that's your running back. Never mind. So 20th pick is what he's giving up.
But what's Jefferson and Lockett? First, probably for Jefferson.
Brian
assuming.
Robinson is this other. Who is your other keeper that you're thinking about, Bob? That's what we're trying to figure out. I'd keep Watson. There, I said it.
Yeah, I mean, I would keep Watson.
And for the 20th round, because you always have a chance of getting Jefferson in the beginning.
Jordan loves the quarterback. Right. Justin Herbert.
I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. I think him and Dobbs are going to be there. They're going to be good.
That's a good matchup. I think they drafted a couple of good. Yeah, you're right, Chris. I think they drafted well. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Goots did something right.
All right. Well, no more questions other than Bob's question, but let's go ahead and get into the breakdown of the keeper league or the TTNL league, Jackal.
Yeah. So what we have here is a failure to communicate. No. So we had four divisions like we were talking about, right? And so here's how we're going to do this. And we have each division has their own playoffs. So you have Sweetness division. Congratulations to Cool Kennedy, 12-3. He definitely took first place in my division. You had Moby Dicka, Mr. Lawhorn. Montgomery's Ward is a 3 seed and myself is the 4 seed. We will be in a divisional playoff matchup. And then in the Luckman division, you're going to have Cup Runneth Over, Spencer Strong, Mr. Cox, Where the Money, and Keenan Allen Wine Mixer, Mr. Sandland, battling it out in the Luckman division. And then in the Buckus division, who I don't think we have a representative in our, from our contingency here at TTNL, but we have Field of Dreams, the High Velocity, the Bear Market, and the Mooney Never Lies, all playing in the Buckus division. And then the Sayers division, which I believe Lady Bear made the playoffs as well. There she is. Agents of Fields as a 3 seed. Yeah, Full Mooney, number 1. Oh, my God. Is that Pote Galvez? Pody. And then Demu 32. So those 4 divisions, right? That's going to be let me get that out of here so I can. So those are the divisional matchups. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a big bracket of, it's going to be a 1 seeds versus 4 seeds, 2 seeds versus 3 seeds to go after the number 1 title. So it's basically a race to the title. So whoever is the number 1 seed, the number 1 point getter out of the 8 teams in each bracket are going to advance to ultimately make it to the final. So it's just going to whittle it down to a head-to-head matchup in week 17. And we're going to write it all up on the website. You guys, I'll put it in each division so you can see who's going to be playing who and what that looks like and kind of describe it more. It's kind of complicated to try to word it all together. Thank you. Queen of the South, which is a badass series. I'll check that out. I appreciate that. And if I butchered the pronunciation, I apologize. But congratulations to the 16 people that did make the playoffs. Everybody that made the playoffs is now battling for a right to be the TTNL ring bearer, belt bearer, trophy bearer. You will get it after the season. The fantasy season is over, but we are definitely in the playoffs here. The next 2 weeks are the playoffs. There is nothing in week 18. It's week 16 and week 17. And it's going to be a fun little way to see who makes it out of out of the play. Gets it to the final. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So you're saying the winners,
I'm not going to try to explain it to you. I'm going to write it up because it's going to be complicated.
Will there be a way that next week we can start when we play the other people from other divisions?
I'm going to put it in the note. I'm going to put it in the message board. Yeah. I'm going to put everything in there with teams, scores. I don't know if I can do rosters, but I'll see what I can do.
Obviously we'll still have what's going on Sleeper,
right,
for the individual leagues.
And so because I can go into each in each division. What I will do is I'll put each matchup, like the entire giant playoff thing format. I will put that in each on each division's message board, so you guys can see what the matchups are, and then I can do updates after like the 1:00 games, show you the scores, and I can do updates after at the end of the Saturday night, and then I can do it again on Sunday after Christmas, so you guys can see what the finals will look like for the following week. It'll be fun, man. And then once we get that, TTNL will be sending out, some hardware to the winners. Mr. Cox has an amazing trophy and ring that he won in the inaugural season, and this is just, it's a testament to the 50, 40 of us that got into this year's league, and we had a waiting list. So next year, hopefully we can make it even a larger league and do some things differently. And try to make this as much of a user-friendly experience and get everybody together. Because I know in our division, we had a lot of fun talking shit and getting after it. So it was a lot of fun. I hope you guys I got to see all the comments and all the shit talking. So I hope you guys enjoyed yourself as well. I know you didn't make the playoffs, Ivan, but I know Sandman, I know you're a lock to make it. And so it was
almost
nice.
Wasn't this year.
But hey, I thought you had a tough division. I will say you had some heavy hitters in your division. When I saw the breakouts and we did it randomly, I was like, oh damn, that's like the gold bracket. So, but nonetheless, I appreciate you jumping on with us, Sandman. I was pleasantly surprised. So thank you.
Yeah, I was like, who the fuck is popping up?
Yeah.
No, I was. So I'll tell you the background of that real quick. I was sitting here and I got a text from Riley Marsaw. He's like, hey, you want to jump on and play Fortnite with me? Because me and him have played Fortnite together before. I'm like, heck yeah. So I got on there and we're talking and we were waiting on a match and he had me on a speaker and Shane walked in.
Nice.
So I was talking to him and he asked me about coming on tomorrow night for the Christmas, and I can't because we're taking the kids to go see the new Avatar in 3D.
Nice. Awesome.
So I said, yeah, but tonight's the fantasy show, and I was thinking about messaging Jackle about coming on.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'll just give you the link and you just jump in. Like, all right, I'll just pop in.
That was nice.
Yeah, that was perfect.
There you go, bud.
Awesome.
Thanks, Bob.
Pleasant surprise. But yeah, it was awesome to see you, Chris, man. Bob has another question. Please tell me you guys are still going to make new shows this off season. I'm sure we'll have. It won't be every week. I think
that'd be tough.
We could have
do like a dynasty show, and we could do a 2023 rankings, kind of like mock draft. We could do some stuff. I mean, I definitely don't think it's the last that you're going to hear of us, as we wrap things up over the next couple of weeks. But, I know TTNL Network will have content year round. I think, depending on what the boys would like, there may be some, fantasy shows that pop up, and we would let you guys know through social media as well as through the Patreon page.
And I'm sure after the draft and everything like that, you'll probably see it. You'll probably get a show. You know what I'm saying?
Because after the draft, that's when the dynasty leagues have their rookie drafts. I'm in two dynasty leagues.
Me too.
Yeah.
So thanks, Ron. So yeah, I mean, those are awesome to do. Those rookie drafts. I did my first just rookie draft this year because I had a league that started last year. So it's actually pretty cool.
Nice.
All right.
Hey, man.
Great show, guys. Chris, man, I'm happy that you jumped in. Like I said, pleasantly surprised. Freaked me out for a second. Like, whoa, what's going on? But I'm glad you were here, man. I'm glad you came and chopped it up with us, talked some ball. And as always, Jackle, love seeing your face.
Always a pleasure. See you tomorrow night.
The T-ball commissioner, the commish,
the
connoisseur. But anyway, guys, it's been great. Before we take off, you guys know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe to The Tape Never Lies, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. Make sure you go to www.thetapeneverlies.com and become a patron. Like I said, you get all the bonus coverage. You get DDP's breakdowns, Kramer's QB school, X's with the O's, cars, keys, all that good stuff. It's great content for a reasonable price. You know what I'm saying? Less than a cup of coffee. Something like that nowadays. So go ahead and become a patron today. For Chris Jackle, for Chris Sandlin, I'm Ivan Vargas. You guys have been watching Keepin It Fantasy here on the Tape Never Lies Network.
What's your fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy.
can't they just stay a little longer?
All right.
Yeah.
Who wants a Mustang?